Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra's Pride, watching the massive alien warships through the viewing screen. The Zephyrian vessels looked like giant metal spears floating in space, each one 3 times larger than his own ship. Their dark hulls reflected no light, making them appear like holes cut into the starfield. "Incoming transmission, Captain," said Lieutenant Kelly Davis from her station. "They want to talk." Jake nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and suddenly a towering alien figure appeared before them. War Chancellor Vex Thule stood nearly 8 feet tall, his body covered in natural armor plates that gleamed like polished stone. 4 arms emerged from his torso, each ending in clawed hands that could crush human bones without effort. His head resembled a cross between a lizard and a shark, with rows of sharp teeth visible when he spoke. "I am War Chancellor Vex Thule of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien announced, his voice deep and threatening. "You will surrender the human workers from the mining world of New Denver. They belong to us now." Dr. Lisa Carter stepped forward from her position near the science station. As the ship's expert on alien cultures, she had studied the Zephyrians for months. "War Chancellor, humans are not property. We are members of the Galactic Federation, with full rights under—" Vex Thule's laugh cut her off. The sound was like grinding metal. "Rights? You speak of rights. Your species has been in space for less than 200 years. We have conquered worlds before your ancestors learned to make fire." Jake kept his voice calm and steady. "The people of New Denver are free citizens. They chose to work there and they can choose to leave. But we will not hand them over as slaves." The War Chancellor's 4 eyes focused on Jake with obvious amusement. "Captain Morrison, is it? Your file makes interesting reading. You fought in something called the Border Wars against your own kind. Tell me, how many of your fellow humans did you kill? That's not relevant to this discussion." "Oh, but it is," Vex Thule continued. "You see, this is what confuses us about your species. You wage war against each other over resources, territory, even ideas. Yet when we offer to take some of your excess population off your hands, you refuse. Where is the logic in this, Dr. Yer?" Carter tried again. "War Chancellor, you don't understand human nature. We may fight among ourselves, but we protect our own when threatened by outsiders. It's how we survived on our home world." "Your home world," Vex Thule repeated, accessing data on his wrist device. "Earth, a planet so hostile that 99% of all species that ever lived there went extinct. Your ancestors should have died out long ago. Instead, you somehow survived ice ages, plagues, volcanic eruptions, and countless wars. Tell me, Dr. Carter, how does such a weak species endure such hardships?" Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. The War Chancellor wasn't just gathering intelligence, he was studying them like specimens. "We adapt," she said simply. "We work together. We find solutions." "Cooperation," Vex Thule said the word like it tasted bad. "Yes, we have observed this strange behavior. Zephyrians are born warriors. We understand strength, dominance, the natural order where the powerful rule the weak. But you humans share resources with the sick and elderly. You risk your lives for strangers. You even mourn your enemies after defeating them." Jake could see where this conversation was heading. "What do you want, War Chancellor?" "The Zephyrian Empire requires workers for our expansion projects. Your people from New Denver have useful skills in mining and construction. They will be well treated as long as they obey orders. And if we refuse?" Vex Thule's teeth showed in what might have been a smile. "Captain, your entire species controls 12 star systems. The Zephyrian Empire spans 400 systems and commands fleets that have never known defeat. You have perhaps 50 warships, we have over 10,000. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. "What do you think will happen if you refuse?" The bridge of the Terra's Pride fell silent. Every human present understood the math. Even if they fought with everything they had, the odds were impossible. Ambassador Kate Williams, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but her voice carried the authority of Earth's government. "War Chancellor Vex Thule, I speak for the United Earth Coalition and all human settlements. We formally reject your demand. The citizens of New Denver, and all humans everywhere, will remain free." The alien's 4 eyes blinked in what looked like genuine surprise. "Ambassador, perhaps you did not understand the situation. We are not making a request. We are informing you of our decision." "And I am informing you of ours," Kate replied calmly. "We will not surrender our people to slavery." Vex Thule was quiet for a long moment, studying the humans on the screen. When he spoke again, his voice held a mixture of confusion and annoyance. "This makes no strategic sense. You cannot win against us. Your ships are smaller, your weapons weaker, your numbers pathetic. Yet you choose to fight rather than sacrifice a few thousand individuals for the survival of your entire species." Dr. Carter found herself speaking without thinking. "That's exactly why we'll fight. You don't understand us at all." "Enlighten me, Doctor." Lisa looked at her companions, then back at the alien commander. "You see our emotions as weakness, our cooperation as inefficiency, our willingness to sacrifice for others as stupidity. But these things aren't bugs in our programming, War Chancellor. They're features." "Explain." "Humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being the strongest or the fastest. We did it by being the most adaptable. We learned to work together, to share knowledge, to take care of our weakest members, because we knew that any one of us might have the key to survival when the next crisis hit." Vex Thule's head tilted slightly. "And you believe this will help you against our fleets?" Jake stepped forward again. "War Chancellor, you've studied our history. You know we've fought wars that lasted decades. You know we've survived disasters that should have wiped us out. What you don't seem to understand is what that made us." "What did it make you, Captain?" "Dangerous," Jake said simply. "More dangerous than you can imagine." For the first time since the conversation began, War Chancellor Vex Thule looked uncertain. He studied the humans for several seconds, then seemed to remember his superiority. His confidence returned with a harsh laugh. "Captain Morrison, your bravado is amusing but pointless. The Zephyrian Empire has conquered species far more advanced than humanity. We have destroyed civilizations that had mastered technologies you cannot even comprehend. What makes you think your primitive world can stand against us?" "Ambassador," Williams smiled sadly. "Because, War Chancellor, you just made the same mistake that every bully in human history has made. You confused kindness for weakness." "Are you threatening me, Ambassador?" "No," Kate said quietly. "I'm warning you. There's a difference." Vex Thule's 4 arms gestured dismissively. "Your warnings mean nothing. You have 72 hours to reconsider your position. Deliver the workers from New Denver, or we will take them ourselves." "And Captain Morrison?" "Yes? When we come for them, we will make sure the rest of your species watches. Let it be a lesson about the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing fear in some faces, determination in others. "Well," he said finally, "I guess we're at war." Dr. Carter was already working at her station, downloading everything she could about Zephyrian military tactics. "Jake, they weren't lying about their numbers. We're facing impossible odds." "Lisa," Jake said, walking over to her station, "in all your studies of alien species, have you ever found one that spent its entire evolutionary history on a planet actively trying to kill it?" She looked up at him, understanding beginning to dawn in her eyes. "No, Earth is unique in that regard." "Then maybe," Jake said with a grim smile, "it's time to show the galaxy what that kind of evolution produces." He turned to Lieutenant Davis. "Kelly, send a message to Admiral Rodriguez. Tell him the Zephyrians just declared war on humanity." "What else should I tell him, sir?" Jake looked out at the alien fleet waiting in the darkness. "Tell him they have no idea what they just woke up." Admiral Pete Rodriguez sat in his command chair aboard the battleship New Horizon, staring at the message from Captain Morrison. The words seemed impossible, yet there they were on his screen. The Zephyrian Empire had declared war on humanity. "Sir." Commander Beth Adams stood at attention beside his chair. She led the Human Ranger Corps, an elite unit trained for the most dangerous missions. "What are your orders?" Pete looked around the bridge at his officers. These men and women had served with him through the border wars, the asteroid mining, conflicts, and a dozen smaller battles. They knew what war meant. They had seen what humans could do to each other when pushed too far. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," Pete said quietly. "Tell them to implement Protocol Endgame immediately." The bridge fell silent. Protocol Endgame was a plan that military leaders hoped they would never need to use. It was designed for one scenario only, when humanity faced complete extinction. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Clark, the Special Operations Commander, stepped forward. "Admiral, Protocol Endgame means total war. Every civilian ship, every mining station, every colony becomes part of the military. Are you sure?" Pete stood up and walked to the large viewing screen that showed Earth hanging in space like a blue and white jewel. "Danny, the Zephyrians have 10,000 warships. We have 53. They control 400 star systems. We control 12. In a fair fight, we lose everything. So we don't fight fair," Beth said with a grim smile. "Exactly." Pete turned back to his officers. "Get General Sam Tucker on the line. We need to talk." Minutes later, General Tucker's face appeared on the screen. He was calling from Mars Command, Earth's primary military headquarters. Behind him, Pete could see staff officers running back and forth, already implementing the emergency protocols. "Pete," Sam said without any greeting, "I've been reading the intelligence reports on the Zephyrians. This isn't going to be like anything we've faced before." "What do you mean?" "These aliens have been conquering other species for over 1,000 years, but every species they've defeated has fought the same way. Big fleets meeting in open space, honor-bound combat, predictable tactics." Sam pulled up a holographic display showing various alien battle formations. "They're used to enemies who follow rules." Pete nodded slowly. "And humans don't follow rules when we're fighting for survival." "That's right. I've been talking to Dr. Carter's reports from the diplomatic meeting. The Zephyrians think our emotions make us weak. They see cooperation as inefficiency. They don't understand why we would die for strangers." Commander Adams laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They're about to get an education." General Tucker continued his briefing. "I've spoken with Chief Engineer Tony Blake about converting civilian equipment into weapons. The good news is that most of our mining and construction gear can be weaponized with minimal modifications." "What kind of modifications?" Pete asked. "Asteroid mining lasers can cut through ship hulls. Cargo haulers can carry massive explosive charges. Terraforming equipment can be turned into planet-wide defense systems." Tony Blake's voice came through the communication system as he joined the conversation. "Admiral, we've been building tools to survive in the harshest environments in space. It turns out those same tools make excellent weapons." Pete felt a cold smile cross his face. "What about our ships?" "That's where it gets interesting," Tony continued. "The Zephyrians build for intimidation and direct confrontation. Big ships, heavy armor, powerful energy weapons. But they're slow and predictable. And our ships? Fast, maneuverable, and designed by people who grew up watching war movies," Tony said. "We've got some surprises for them." General Tucker added more details. "I've been coordinating with colony governors across all 12 systems. Every settlement is implementing emergency protocols. Civilian populations are being moved to secure locations, but more importantly, they're all volunteering to help." Pete wasn't surprised. Humans had a long history of coming together when faced with extinction. What kind of help? Everything. Retired soldiers are training new recruits. Factory workers are converting production lines to build weapons and ammunition. Even the children are helping by building communication equipment and sensor arrays. "Commander," Adams pulled up another display. "Admiral, I've been looking at the Zephyrian fleet movements. They're sending 500 ships to attack our border colonies first. Classic intimidation tactics. Make the outer settlements surrender so the core worlds won't resist." "Which colonies are they targeting?" "New Denver, Haven's Gate, and Frontier Station." Pete studied the tactical display. Those 3 colonies were among humanity's newest and smallest settlements. The Zephyrians probably expected them to surrender without a fight. "What's the population of those colonies combined?" "About 50,000 civilians," Danny Clark answered, plus maybe 2,000 security personnel. And the Zephyrians are sending 500 warships to deal with them. Overkill, Beth said. They want to make an example. Pete walked back to his command chair, his mind racing through possibilities. Sam, what would happen if those colonies appeared to be abandoned when the Zephyrians arrived? Abandoned? General Tucker's eyebrows raised. Pete, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that the Zephyrians expect us to act like every other species they've conquered. They expect us to defend our colonies with desperate last stands and noble sacrifices. But that's not what we're going to do, Commander Adams said, understanding, beginning to show in her voice. No. We're going to do what humans do best when faced with superior force. We're going to cheat. Pete turned to the communications officer. Send orders to all 3 target colonies. Full evacuation protocols, but make it look like the civilians fled in panic. Leave the infrastructure intact but apparently abandoned. What about the security forces? Danny asked. They stay hidden, along with some very special surprises. Chief Engineer Blake's voice crackled through the speakers again. Admiral, I think I know what you're planning. Give me 48 hours, and I can have those colonies ready for visitors. What kind of ready? The kind that will make the Zephyrians wish they had stayed home. General Tucker leaned forward on the screen. Pete, this is going to be the most dangerous gamble in human history. If it fails. If it fails, we're no worse off than we are now, Pete replied. But if it works, we send a message to the entire galaxy. What message? Pete looked around at his officers, seeing determination replacing fear on their faces. That humanity is not like the other species they've conquered. We don't fight with honor. We don't follow their rules, and we definitely don't give up. Commander Adams was already working on her tactical display. Admiral, I'll need volunteers for the colony operations. This is going to be extremely dangerous. How many do you need? About 500 rangers for each colony. You'll have them, Pete said without hesitation. What else do you need? Time to prepare the surprises, and maybe some luck. General Tucker's image flickered as he prepared to end the call. Pete, there's something else. Intelligence reports suggest that other alien species in the Federation are watching this conflict closely. If we can make the Zephyrians bleed, it might change how the entire galaxy sees humanity. Good. It's time they understood what we really are. The call ended, leaving Pete alone with his bridge crew. He could see questions in their eyes along with fear and excitement. Admiral, Lieutenant Kelly Davis said quietly, are we really going to win this war? Pete thought about the question for a long moment. He thought about human history, the impossible victories, the last-minute escapes, the times when everything seemed hopeless but humans found a way to survive anyway. Kelly, I don't know if we're going to win, but I know we're going to make them pay a price they never expected, and sometimes that's enough. He turned back to the viewing screen, watching as ships began moving throughout the solar system. Civilian vessels were being converted to military use. Cargo haulers were loading weapons instead of supplies. Mining ships were being fitted with armor and shields. In the distance, he could see the construction yards working at maximum capacity. Every human settlement was becoming a fortress. Every civilian was becoming a soldier. Every tool was becoming a weapon. War Chancellor Vexthal had declared war on what he thought was a weak species. But he had actually declared war on something much more dangerous, a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to survive against impossible odds. Pete smiled grimly as he watched the preparations continue. The Zephyrians were about to learn why humans had survived ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts, and countless wars with each other. They were about to discover that kindness and cooperation weren't weaknesses. They were the tools that had forged the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever seen. Begin Phase 1 of Protocol Endgame, Pete ordered, and send a message to Captain Morrison. What should it say, sir? Tell him the galaxy is about to get a demonstration in human warfare. Class begins when the Zephyrians arrive at our colonies. War Chancellor Vexthal stood on the bridge of his flagship Dominator, watching the human colony of Haven's Gate through the tactical display. His fleet of 500 warships had arrived expecting to find desperate humans preparing their defenses. Instead, they found empty space stations and silent cities. "Commander Zakthul, what do your sensors show?" Vexthul asked his second-in-command. "The colony appears abandoned, War Chancellor. No energy signatures from the cities. The orbital platforms are powered down. It looks like the humans fled when they detected our approach." Vexthul's 4 eyes narrowed. "Cowards. Just as I expected. Send boarding parties to secure the mining facilities. We can still use their equipment even if the workers ran away." 3. Massive Zephyrian troop transports moved toward the apparently empty space stations. Each ship carried 1,000 soldiers, more than enough to secure a human colony. The transports docked with the main orbital platform without incident. Inside the hidden command bunker on Haven's Gate, Commander Beth Adams watched the alien ships through concealed cameras. Around her, 50 human rangers waited in absolute silence. They had been hiding in the colony's maintenance tunnels for 2 days, preparing for this moment. "Contact Admiral Rodriguez," Beth whispered into her communicator. "Phase 1 is beginning." On the orbital platform, Zephyrian soldiers moved through empty corridors with weapons ready. The stations appeared completely deserted. Human belongings were scattered around, suggesting a hasty evacuation. Food was still on tables in the cafeterias. Personal photos remained on desks in the offices. "Too easy," muttered Sergeant Amy Foster, watching from her hiding place inside the station's central hub. She had been a Marine for 12 years and had fought in wars where humans killed humans. She knew how to make every shot count and how to fight when outnumbered. The Zephyrian search team split up to cover more ground. They were looking for anything valuable: technology, weapons, or information about human military capabilities. What they found instead was a lesson in human warfare. Amy triggered the first trap when the alien soldiers reached the main power center. The lights went out suddenly, plunging the station into darkness. Emergency lighting came on, but it was red and dim, making it hard to see clearly. "Ambush positions," Amy whispered to her team. "Remember, we're not trying to win, we're trying to teach." The Zephyrians had excellent night vision, but they had never fought an enemy that used darkness as a weapon. Human soldiers began appearing from maintenance, shafts, ventilation ducts, and hidden panels in the walls. They fired quick bursts from their weapons, then disappeared before the aliens could respond. "What is this?" shouted a Zephyrian officer as his soldiers tried to fight enemies they could barely see. "Where are they coming from?" Amy's voice echoed through the station's communication system. "Lesson 1. Humans don't fight fair when we're fighting for survival." The Zephyrians tried to use their superior firepower, but their energy weapons were designed for open battlefield combat. In the tight corridors of the space station, their shots often hit walls or equipment instead of targets. Meanwhile, human weapons were designed for close-quarters fighting. On the surface of Haven's Gate, more Zephyrian forces were learning different lessons. Captain Ryan Hayes watched from his hidden position as alien soldiers explored the abandoned mining complex. His ship, the Ghost Runner, was buried under fake rock and sand, invisible to alien sensors. "Dr. Paul Miller, are you ready with the psychological warfare?" Ryan asked through his communicator. "Ready, Captain," came the reply from the colony's hidden command center. "Broadcasting human history files now." Suddenly, the Zephyrian soldiers heard voices coming from speakers hidden throughout the mining complex. The voices spoke in clear, galactic standard language describing human battles from Earth's history. "The Battle of Stalingrad lasted 200 days, one voice said calmly. "Human soldiers fought for every building, every room, every staircase. When they ran out of ammunition, they fought with knives. When they ran out of knives, they fought with their bare hands." The Zephyrian soldiers looked around nervously. They were used to enemies who fought with honor and followed predictable patterns. These recordings described something else entirely. "The siege of Leningrad lasted 872 days, another voice continued. "The human population was starving, freezing and dying from disease, but they never surrendered. They ate leather, grass, and tree bark to survive. They chose death over slavery. Commander Zach Thule tried to contact his soldiers on the surface. Report your status. What is your situation? Sir, we're hearing strange transmissions about human warfare. The descriptions are disturbing. Ignore them. Focus on your mission. But the recordings continued. They described human wars that lasted decades, battles where humans fought against impossible odds and victories won through pure stubbornness and refusal to quit. Lieutenant Max Cooper waited in his experimental fighter, hidden inside what looked like an abandoned cargo container. His ship was smaller and faster than anything the Zephyrians had seen. While alien pilots followed strict formation patterns, Max had learned to fly by watching old human war movies and playing combat simulations. "This is Ghost Leader," he whispered into his radio. "Zephyrian patrol ships are moving past my position, beginning attack run." Max's fighter erupted from the fake cargo container like a bullet fired from a gun. He flew directly at the nearest Zephyrian patrol ship, then pulled up at the last second, rolling under its hull and firing at its engines. The alien ship exploded before its pilot could react. "Impossible," breathed the pilot of the second patrol ship. "No fighter craft can maneuver like that." But Max was already behind him, using techniques that alien military academies would consider insane. He flew in patterns that should have torn his ship apart, pulling maneuvers that relied on human reflexes and intuition rather than computer calculations. Back on the orbital platform, the Zephyrian boarding parties were learning what humans meant by guerrilla warfare. Sergeant Foster's team struck without warning, then vanished into the station's hidden passages. They used the Zephyrians' own weapons against them, turning captured alien technology into traps and ambush tools. "This is not warfare," complained a Zephyrian officer, as his squad tried to chase human soldiers through maintenance tunnels barely large enough for a single person. "This is madness." "No," Amy's voice came from speakers throughout the station. "This is how humans fight when you threaten our families." The Zephyrian soldiers found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Humans appeared from impossible hiding places, attacked with weapons that shouldn't exist, and used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. War Chancellor Vex Thule watched the reports coming in from his forces with growing confusion. His soldiers were taking casualties from an enemy they couldn't even see most of the time. His patrol ships were being destroyed by fighters that moved like living creatures instead of machines. "War Chancellor," Commander Zach Thule said nervously, "perhaps we should request reinforcements." "Reinforcements?" Vex Thule's voice was full of disbelief. "We have 500 warships attacking a colony of 50,000 humans. How can we need reinforcements?" "Sir, our soldiers report that the humans are not fighting like any enemy we have encountered before. They use weapons we don't understand, tactics that seem impossible, and they appear to have no fear of death." On the surface of Haven's Gate, Captain Hayes triggered the colony's final surprise. Hidden mining charges, placed throughout the complex, over the past 2 days began exploding in sequence. The blasts were carefully timed to herd the Zephyrian ground forces toward a central location. "This is Ghost Runner to all units," Ryan announced. "The aliens are exactly where we want them, beginning final phase." What the Zephyrians didn't know was that the mining complex had been turned into a massive trap. Every tunnel, every building, every piece of equipment had been rigged to funnel alien forces into a killing zone where human weapons would be most effective. The battle for Haven's Gate lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Zephyrian forces had lost over 200 soldiers and 15 ships. The humans had lost 12 rangers and 1 fighter pilot. But more importantly, they had sent a message that would spread throughout the Zephyrian fleet. War Chancellor Vex Thule stood in his command center, staring at casualty reports that seemed impossible. How could a superior force suffer such losses against primitive humans? "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the human forces." "Put it through." Captain Morrison's face appeared on the screen. He was standing on the bridge of the Terra's Pride, and behind him, Vex Thule could see other human officers working calmly at their stations. "War Chancellor," Morrison said politely, I hope your soldiers enjoyed their visit to Haven's Gate. Consider it a free sample of human hospitality. Your forces fought without honor, Vexithul snarled, using traps, ambushes, psychological warfare. This is not how civilized species conduct warfare. Morrison smiled coldly. War Chancellor, you declared war on a species that spent millions of years learning how to kill everything that tried to kill us. Did you really expect us to line up in neat formation so you could shoot us more easily? You cannot win against our numbers. Maybe not, Morrison agreed. But we can make you pay a price you never expected. Every colony you attack will cost you more ships and soldiers. Every battle will teach your forces new nightmares about human warfare. Vexithul was quiet for a moment, studying the human captain. What do you want? What we've always wanted, to be left alone. Withdraw your forces from human space, and we'll forget this happened. And if we refuse? Morrison's smile disappeared. Then you'll learn why humans are the only species that spent its entire evolution fighting a planet that was actively trying to kill it. You'll discover what that kind of survival pressure creates. The transmission ended, leaving War Chancellor Vexithul staring at a blank screen. For the first time in his military career, he felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. President Helen Brooks stood before the assembled leaders of the United Earth Coalition in the underground command center on Mars. The holographic displays around the room showed human fleets moving throughout the 12 systems, preparing for what everyone knew would be the final battle. The Zephyrians have requested reinforcements from the Galactic Council, she announced to the room. 3 other alien species have agreed to send fleets to help them finish what they started. General Sam Tucker pulled up tactical displays showing enemy positions. Madam President, we're now facing odds of 15-1. The Zephyrians have learned from their mistakes at Haven's Gate. They're not going to underestimate us again. Good, said Admiral Pete Rodriguez from his position aboard the New Horizon. I was getting worried they might stay stupid. Dr. Nina Walsh, the xenopsychologist who had been studying alien behavior patterns, stepped forward. The psychological profile is interesting. War Chancellor Vexithul has gone from amusement to anger to fear. His request for help suggests that he finally understands what kind of enemy he's facing. What kind of enemy are we? Asked Commander Jack Stone, the hero who had led the defense of Terra's Gate, humanity's most important trade hub. The kind that gets more dangerous when cornered, Nina replied. Every alien species they've conquered before either surrendered when faced with superior odds or fought honorable battles that followed predictable patterns. We do neither. President Brooks walked to the central display showing the approaching enemy fleets. Over 8,000 alien warships were converging on the Sol system, humanity's home. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Admiral Johnson, she said, addressing the fleet commander who would lead the final battle. What's our status? Admiral Carl Johnson's weathered face appeared on the communication screen. He was aboard the flagship Earth's Defiance, leading a combined fleet of human military vessels, converted civilian ships and experimental fighters that had never been tested in real combat. We have 200 ships ready for battle, Madam President. Not all of them are military vessels, but every one of them is crewed by humans who understand what we're fighting for. Our families, said Commander Stone quietly. Our freedom, our right to exist. That's right, Carl nodded. And I've been in enough wars to know that fighting for something you believe in makes you 10 times more dangerous than fighting for conquest or glory. The battle began when the alien fleets entered the outer edges of the Sol system. War Chancellor Vexithul had learned from his previous encounters with humans. His ships moved in tight formations, watching for ambushes and traps. His sensors scanned every asteroid, every piece of space debris, every possible hiding place. What he found was a human fleet that had no intention of hiding. Admiral Johnson's ships met the alien forces in open space, exactly where military doctrine said they should never fight. The humans were outnumbered 40-1, but they moved with a coordination that seemed impossible for such a diverse fleet. All ships, engage at will, Carl ordered. Remember, we're not trying to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to make them understand the cost of fighting us. The human ships spread out in patterns that confused the alien commanders. Some vessels attacked in tight formations like traditional military units. Others broke away to fight as individual hunters picking off enemy ships with hit-and-run tactics. Still others worked in pairs or small groups, covering each other with a teamwork that spoke of years fighting together. Commander Stone led a squadron of converted mining ships against a Zephyrian battle group. His vessel, the Frontier's Edge, had been a cargo hauler just 3 months ago. Now it carried enough explosives to crack a moon in half. "This is Frontier's Edge to all mining ships," Jack announced. "Remember, we know how to work in dangerous conditions. Space combat is just another day at the office." The mining ships moved through the battle like they were navigating an asteroid field, using skills learned in the most hazardous job in human space. They avoided enemy fire not through military training, but through the reflexes of people who had spent years working where one mistake meant death. War Chancellor Vexthul watched the battle from his command ship, trying to understand what he was seeing. The human ships fought like a pack of predators, each one adapting its tactics to the situation. Some attacked head-on with reckless courage. Others used cunning and stealth. Still others sacrificed themselves to protect their companions. "This is impossible," he said to Commander Zakthul. "How can they coordinate so many different fighting styles?" "Sir, I think they're not following a single battle plan. Each ship seems to be making its own decisions, but somehow they all work together." Vexthul realized with growing horror that he was watching something unique in galactic warfare. Most species fought with either individual cunning or group coordination, but rarely both. Humans seemed to switch between the two approaches without losing effectiveness. Lieutenant Max Cooper led his fighter squadron through the alien fleet like a swarm of angry insects. His pilots flew with a creativity that drove enemy commanders to distraction. They used techniques copied from ancient air combat, space battle, simulations, and pure improvisation. "Ghost Squadron, this is Ghost Leader," Max announced as he dove his fighter between two massive alien battleships. "Remember, we're too small for their main guns and too fast for their fighters. Make them chase us into their own crossfire." The human fighters moved through the battle like they were playing a deadly game. They took risks that should have gotten them killed, pulled maneuvers that violated physics, and somehow survived encounters that should have been impossible. Dr. Paul Miller's psychological warfare continued throughout the battle. Every alien ship received broadcasts showing human history, the wars, the disasters, the impossible survivals. But now the recordings included recent events. "This is what happened at Haven's Gate," one broadcast announced, showing footage of Zephyrian soldiers fleeing from human rangers. "This is what happened at New Denver at Frontier Station. At every colony you attacked, you declared war on a species that has never accepted defeat." The tide of battle turned when Admiral Johnson implemented the final phase of humanity's battle plan. He had been holding his best ships in reserve, waiting for the perfect moment. "All ships execute protocol desperate measures," Carl ordered. The human vessels that had been fighting defensively suddenly changed tactics. Ships that had been retreating turned around and charged directly at enemy formations. Damaged vessels that should have withdrawn instead rammed into alien ships, using their destruction as weapons. Commander Stone's ship was badly damaged, its engines failing and life support systems offline. Instead of surrendering, he aimed the Frontier's Edge directly at the enemy flagship. "This is Commander Stone to all human forces," he announced calmly. "Sometimes the best way to win is to make the enemy understand they can't afford to keep fighting." His ship struck the Zephyrian command vessel like a missile, the explosion visible throughout the battle zone, but Jack had ejected in an escape pod at the last second. His sacrifice carefully calculated to maximize psychological impact while preserving his life. War Chancellor Vexthul found himself aboard a crippled ship, surrounded by human vessels that should have been destroyed hours ago. His fleet had superior numbers and technology, but they were losing, not because humans were stronger, but because they were willing to pay any price for victory. "War Chancellor," his communications officer said weakly, "the human fleet commander is requesting to speak with you." Vexthul looked around his damaged bridge, seeing fear in his officers' eyes for the first time in their military careers. Put him through. Admiral Johnson's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, the bridge of the Earth's Defiance showed battle damage but continued operation. The human commander looked tired but determined. War Chancellor Vexthul, Carl said politely, I believe you wanted to learn about human warfare. Have we provided an adequate demonstration? Your losses are unsustainable, Vexthul replied, but his voice lacked conviction. You cannot continue fighting like this. Can't we? Carl smiled grimly. War Chancellor, you've been studying the wrong part of human history. You looked at our wars and saw the death tolls, the destruction, the apparent waste. But you missed the most important lesson, which is, humans have never fought a war where we didn't find a way to survive. We've been invaded, conquered, nearly exterminated, and written off as finished more times than we can count. But we're still here. Vexthul was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. What do you want? Peace, Carl said simply. Withdraw your forces from human space. Leave us alone to build our colonies and raise our families. In return, we'll forget this war ever happened. And if we refuse? Admiral Johnson gestured to the tactical display showing the ongoing battle. Human ships continued fighting despite impossible odds, their crews refusing to surrender even when their vessels were crippled. Then we'll keep teaching you about human nature until you decide peace is preferable to war. War Chancellor Vexthul looked at his damaged fleet, his demoralized officers, and the human ships that continued fighting despite having every reason to quit. For the first time in Zephyrian history, a military commander made a decision based on wisdom rather than pride. I accept your terms, he said quietly. The Battle of Sol ended not with human victory or alien defeat, but with understanding. The Zephyrian Empire learned that some species are too dangerous to conquer, not because of their weapons or technology, but because of their refusal to accept slavery. 3 months later, Ambassador Kate Williams addressed the Galactic Council. Representatives from hundreds of alien species listened as she spoke about the war that had changed everything. The Zephyrian Empire has formally recognized human sovereignty over our 12 systems, she announced. But more importantly, they have learned something that we hope other species will remember. What is that? Asked the council speaker. Kate smiled as she looked around the chamber filled with alien representatives. That humanity doesn't want to conquer anyone. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be left alone to explore, to build and to grow. But if you threaten our families, our freedom, or our right to exist, you will discover why we are the only species that survived a planet that spent 4 billion years trying to kill us. The council chamber was silent as the implications sank in. In the official records next to the entry for Homo sapiens, a note was quietly added. Recommend peaceful relations. Under no circumstances declare war on this species. Humanity had won its place in the galaxy not through conquest, but by proving they were too dangerous to fight and too valuable as allies to ignore. It was, Dr. Nina Walsh later wrote, the most human victory possible, turning enemies into friends through a combination of overwhelming force and unexpected mercy. The war was over. Humanity was free. And the galaxy had learned that sometimes the deadliest species is the one that refuses to die.